What if I told you the heir to the British throne, the man who has been groomed his entire life to carry the weight of a kingdom on his shoulders, is now fighting for his very survival? Imagine the corridors of Buckingham Palace, usually so serene, echoing with frantic whispers, urgent footsteps, and the silent tension of a family grappling with the unimaginable. King Charles and Kate Middleton have officially confirmed what no one wanted to believe, and the truth about Prince William's condition is more devastating than the public could have ever anticipated. But before we dive into the details, let me ask you something. How would you react if the person you believed invincible suddenly became painfully vulnerable, lying in a hospital bed while the world watches in anxious anticipation? Before we continue, please hit the like button, subscribe to the channel, and turn on the notification bell for updates. This isn't just another royal story. It's a story about power, legacy, fragility, and the thin line between public perception and private reality. It's about a family forced to confront fears that have been long buried behind polished smiles and ceremonial duties. And it's about a nation, and indeed, the world, realizing that even a prince, even the future king, can be brought to his knees in an instant. What exactly happened to Prince William? How did a routine day spiral into one of the most shocking moments in modern royal history? And why did it take a direct confirmation from King Charles and Kate Middleton themselves to reveal the gravity of the situation? These are questions that have haunted insiders, reporters, and royal watchers alike. And tonight, we'll peel back every layer, uncover every hidden detail, and reveal the truth that no headline dared to print. The story begins with what was supposed to be an ordinary engagement. Prince William, ever the dutiful royal, had scheduled a private visit to a charity in central London. Smiles were exchanged, photographs taken, and yet, behind the cameras and the polite applause, a storm was quietly brewing. Something went wrong, something no one predicted, and it set off a chain of events that would shake the monarchy to its very core. Initial reports were vague, hinting only at a minor incident. But the reality, as confirmed by King Charles and Kate Middleton, was far more alarming. This was no minor accident. The severity of William's injuries has sent shockwaves through the palace, and the reverberations extend far beyond the walls of Buckingham or even the UK itself. It's difficult to overstate just how unusual this public confirmation is. Royals rarely, if ever, reveal the intimate details of health crises. Discretion has always been the cornerstone of the monarchy. Public statements are carefully curated, rehearsed, and sanitized to maintain an image of control and stability. And yet, today, the world has been given a rare glimpse behind that curtain. King Charles, known for his measured words and diplomatic restraint, and Kate Middleton, celebrated for her composure and elegance under pressure, have broken that silence. Why now? Why make this unprecedented disclosure? The answer lies not just in the severity of William's injuries, but in the cascading consequences that have already begun to affect the family, the palace, and the nation. Something so serious required transparency, but even in that transparency, hints of secrecy remain, whispers of details withheld, as if even the most trusted insiders are only allowed to know fragments of the whole truth. From the first moment the news leaked, speculation ran rampant. Media outlets scrambled to interpret the limited information, social media exploded with theories, and royal experts were left piecing together fragments of the puzzle. Some speculated it was a sporting accident, others suggested a mishap during a routine engagement, and a few even whispered of darker possibilities, unconfirmed but no less tantalizing. The palace, meanwhile, maintained a strict schedule of controlled statements, issuing a careful acknowledgement while keeping specifics tightly sealed. But the cracks in the story grew wider with each passing hour. Sources, both anonymous and semi-official, began revealing inconsistencies, anomalies, and surprising facts that pointed to a far more complicated picture than the public had been led to believe. This story matters now more than ever. Prince William is not just any individual. He is a central figure in one of the world's most prominent royal families. His health and well-being have implications for succession, for the royal children who look up to him, and for the nation itself. In a monarchy, perception is nearly as crucial as reality. A future king in crisis can spark uncertainty, fear, and even unrest among the public who have long placed their trust in the stability of the crown. And make no mistake, this is not a moment that can be swept under a rug or glossed over with ceremonial appearances. The stakes are staggering, and the decisions made behind closed doors in the coming days could reshape the monarchy's future in ways we are only beginning to comprehend. The human dimension of this story is equally compelling. Imagine Kate Middleton, balancing the relentless public gaze with the intimate fear for her husband's life. Imagine King Charles, poised before cameras, yet privately grappling with the potential implications for the lineage he has long safeguarded. Imagine the children, George, Charlotte, and Louis, suddenly confronted with the fragility of a parent they have always seen as a figure of strength and reassurance. And then imagine the staff, the aides, the advisors, each of them carrying secrets, anxieties, and loyalty in equal measure. This is a family, under extreme pressure, facing a crisis that could define not just their personal lives, but the history of the monarchy itself. And yet, even with all this chaos, questions linger. How did the accident occur? Was it preventable? Were there warning signs that went unnoticed? And most importantly, what does the future hold for Prince William, both medically and as a public figure? The palace's official statement is deliberate, precise, and carefully worded, leaving room for interpretation but offering undeniable confirmation that the situation is grave. But what has been left unsaid is as important as what has been revealed. There are whispers of internal disagreements, hidden medical complications, and private interventions that have yet to be disclosed to the public. And it is in these hidden corners of the story, these overlooked details and subtle signals, where the true drama unfolds. Before we move forward into the chapters that will reveal the full extent of this crisis, consider this. The monarchy has weathered scandals, tragedies, and crises before, but rarely one so immediate, so intimate, and so publicly scrutinized. Each revelation we will explore tonight, from the initial accident, to the palace's internal response, to the reactions of the royal children, to the unprecedented medical disclosures, builds a narrative of suspense, urgency, and human drama that is rarely allowed to surface in such raw form. And while we will uncover shocking facts and unexpected twists, the story is far from complete. With every detail, the stakes rise, the implications deepen, and the tension grows. So, what really happened to Prince William? How did a day that began with routine appearances turn into a crisis that required direct confirmation from King Charles and Kate Middleton? What are the hidden consequences for the family, for the children, for the nation, and for the monarchy itself? These questions will guide us through the next hour, each chapter peeling back another layer, revealing insights, contradictions, and truths that have never before been seen by the public eye. And make no mistake, what comes next will challenge everything you thought you knew about the royal family, the safety of the heir, and the fragile balance of tradition, duty, and personal vulnerability. But here's the thing. While we know Prince William is severely injured, we don't yet know the full story. The palace is carefully controlling the narrative, the public is speculating, and insiders are only offering fragments. What comes next is a series of revelations that will shock, surprise, and perhaps even unsettle you. And the first chapter, coming next, will reveal the initial incident, the moment it all began, and the events that set the stage for a crisis that could change the course of the monarchy forever. And just when you think you understand the situation, just when you think you've grasped the gravity of the events, you'll realize there is more to this story. More secrets, more hidden pressures, more decisions being made in silence, and more drama unfolding behind closed doors. But what came next would change everything, and no one saw it coming. What if the very first moment you think everything is fine, reality shatters in an instant? That was exactly what happened on the day Prince William's life took an unexpected and devastating turn. What began as a seemingly ordinary visit to a charity in central London quickly spiraled into chaos, and no one, neither palace staff nor the public, was prepared for the scale of what would unfold. But what exactly happened in those fleeting minutes? How did a prince, a future king trained to navigate any crisis, find himself suddenly vulnerable, at the mercy of circumstances beyond his control? The day had begun like any other. Prince William, as always, rose early, his schedule meticulously planned by aides and advisors. There were calls to review charity reports, a briefing on ongoing initiatives, and a careful review of talking points for the engagement later that morning. Kate, ever attentive, made sure his children were prepared for school and activities, handling a whirlwind of logistics while remaining poised in public. The palace machine was in motion, orchestrated to perfection, or so it seemed. But beneath the surface, subtle pressures had been building. A tight schedule, security concerns, and small, seemingly innocuous miscommunications that would later prove critical. William arrived at the charity, greeted with polite applause and the flashing of cameras. Everything looked routine. A wave here, a handshake there. Smiles. Pleasantries. The kind of photo ops that had become second nature to him over decades of royal appearances. But behind those calm expressions, tension simmered. Security personnel, normally invisible to the public, were unusually alert. There were whispers among aides, a sudden shifting of positions, and the briefest moments of unease that the trained eye might notice but the casual observer would miss. And then it happened. The accident was sudden. One moment, William was walking alongside the charity's director, engaging in a conversation about fundraising initiatives. The next, a misstep, a miscalculation of distance, a slip on a damp patch, or perhaps a flaw in the flooring no one had noticed, sent him off balance. In that fraction of a second, time seemed to freeze. Gasps echoed. Staff rushed forward. And in that chaotic blur, the future king fell, hitting the ground with a force that reverberated through the surrounding courtyard. The impact was jarring, the kind of fall that instantly triggers alarms for head trauma, fractures, and internal injuries. Initial reactions were a mixture of disbelief and immediate action. Security personnel surrounded William, lifting him carefully, shielding him from cameras while simultaneously calling for medical assistance. Aides attempted to maintain a semblance of calm, offering words of reassurance while assessing the damage. And Kate, standing just a few meters away, felt the weight of the moment crush her in an instant. Her composure cracked for the first time in public, and aides later revealed she had whispered frantic instructions to medical staff, her voice barely audible over the murmurs of the crowd. Imagine that feeling. The world watching, cameras clicking, reporters noting every twitch and expression, and the person you love most lying vulnerable in front of you. Could you even think straight? But it wasn't just the fall. The situation escalated when staff discovered that William had injured himself more severely than anyone initially suspected. Early assessments suggested a broken wrist or ankle, but the reality was far worse. Insiders later revealed there was concern about head trauma and internal injuries, details the palace would later confirm only after careful deliberation. Doctors, operating under strict confidentiality protocols, insisted on immediate hospitalization. But here's where the story takes a more alarming turn. The decision to move William to a secure medical facility was fraught with tension. The palace faced a dilemma: the urgency of treatment versus the risks of exposing the prince to public and media scrutiny during transit. Every second counted, and every choice carried enormous weight. While William was being stabilized, the palace was thrown into high alert. King Charles, receiving word of the incident, immediately canceled engagements and began coordinating with senior staff. Kate Middleton, though visibly shaken, assumed the role of stabilizing figure, managing both the children and the myriad of urgent communications flooding in from staff, security, and medical personnel. Every decision had to be precise. A single misstep could jeopardize not only William's safety, but also the public perception of the monarchy. Imagine the pressure of having to balance love, duty, and protocol simultaneously, knowing that every word and action could be scrutinized by millions worldwide. How would you handle such a moment? Could you maintain calm while your loved one fought for his life? As the minutes stretched into hours, the narrative outside the palace began to diverge from reality. Social media exploded with speculation. Unverified reports hinted at a minor incident, others suggested a serious accident, and conspiracy theories began to swirl. But the palace's official channels remained silent, as they often do in crises, controlling information to protect the family while the nation anxiously awaited answers. Behind closed doors, however, the atmosphere was electric with fear and urgency. Every aide, every staff member, every security personnel was on edge, operating under protocols designed for emergencies yet never tested at this scale. Imagine walking through those halls, knowing the heir to the throne is critically injured, knowing every decision you make could have national or even global consequences. Could you imagine the weight of that responsibility? But the story doesn't end there. Because what makes this incident particularly shocking isn't just the fall itself, it's the aftermath. Insiders have revealed that William's condition was far more complicated than initially disclosed. The injuries were not just physical, but carried potential long-term implications. Doctors debated treatment options, weighing aggressive interventions against more conservative measures. King Charles and Kate Middleton were consulted on every step, facing decisions that would impact not only the prince's health, but also the broader stability of the monarchy. Imagine being thrust into such a role without warning, having to choose between possible risk and potential survival, all under the glare of public attention. It's a level of stress that most people can scarcely comprehend, and it speaks to the immense pressures borne by the royal family in moments of true crisis. And yet, in the midst of this turmoil, there were moments of striking human vulnerability. Staff later reported that William, conscious but in pain, made jokes to ease tension, a small act of courage and defiance in the face of fear. Kate held his hand, whispering reassurances, her own voice trembling despite her efforts to remain composed. The children, too young to fully understand, were shielded from the worst details, but glimpses of the truth reached them in small ways, eliciting tears, questions, and confusion. The scene painted a vivid portrait of a family united by love, struggling against fear, and operating under pressures that defy ordinary comprehension. Can you imagine witnessing such raw emotion, framed by centuries of protocol and tradition? The implications of the incident reached beyond the personal and familial. Security protocols were immediately reassessed, questions raised about the potential for oversight, and even minor procedural lapses were scrutinized for signs of negligence. There were debates over media strategy, internal communications, and even potential public addresses. How do you announce that the future king is severely injured without inciting panic, speculation, or distrust? How do you navigate the line between transparency and security, between empathy and duty? These questions, unanswered in the public eye, were the very heartbeat of the palace in those first critical hours after the incident. The incident that began with a simple misstep had spiraled into a crisis that exposed vulnerabilities, tested loyalties, and revealed the human side of a family often seen as nearly untouchable. And yet, despite all this chaos, one truth remained undeniable. Prince William's injury was severe, and its implications would ripple far beyond the walls of Buckingham Palace. But what came next, the decisions, the revelations, and the hidden struggles, would alter everything the public thought they knew about this moment in royal history. The full scope of the crisis, the drama behind closed doors, and the consequences for the future of the monarchy were only just beginning to unfold. And what came next would change everything, and no one saw it coming. What happens when the walls of one of the most famous residences in the world suddenly close in with urgency, fear, and secrets? That was exactly what unfolded inside Buckingham Palace after the news of Prince William's accident spread among the inner circle. For the first time in recent memory, the palace, normally a fortress of ceremonial precision and meticulous image management, was plunged into chaos. The cameras outside only captured a fraction of what was happening behind the thick doors, where aides, security personnel, medical advisors, and senior staff raced against time, trying to navigate a crisis no one could have fully anticipated. But what was truly happening inside those hallowed halls, behind closed doors, might shock you even more than the accident itself. The moment the call came to Buckingham Palace, the atmosphere shifted dramatically. King Charles, receiving the news of his eldest son's severe injury, immediately understood the weight of the situation. As monarch, he carries not only personal grief but the responsibility of maintaining the stability of the monarchy. A wave of tension rippled through the corridors as senior aides scrambled to relay instructions, secure sensitive areas, and ensure that the royal children remained unaware of the full scale of the crisis. In many ways, the palace transformed from a symbol of grace and ceremonial perfection into a high-stakes command center, buzzing with activity and anxiety. Staff members later described a sense of urgency unlike anything they had experienced before, a feeling that every decision, every action, could have consequences for the future of the monarchy. Kate Middleton, in her role as consort and mother, immediately became the emotional anchor. Witnesses report that while she remained composed in public view, privately, she was in constant motion, coordinating with staff, contacting medical teams, arranging support for the children, and ensuring that King Charles had accurate updates in real time. Imagine being tasked with managing not only your own panic, but the well-being of the nation's heir, your children, and the delicate optics of a palace in crisis, all while cameras and the public scrutinize every gesture. The pressure is unimaginable, yet Kate handled it with a combination of grace and determination, balancing raw emotion with an unwavering sense of duty. The palace staff were operating at peak intensity. Security personnel, already trained for emergencies, now had to navigate the delicate balance between safety, discretion, and rapid action. The inner circle of advisors coordinated with medical teams, hospital officials, and senior aides, carefully plotting the safest path for William's transfer while simultaneously managing communications with the public. Even minor mistakes could trigger speculation, panic, or even international concern. The smallest slip could transform a controlled crisis into a public relations disaster. In those tense hours, staff whispered and strategized, each word chosen to convey stability while concealing the chaos beneath. Inside the palace, there were debates over the narrative that should be presented to the public. Should they issue a statement immediately or wait for verified medical reports? How much detail could be safely shared without inciting fear? Some aides argued for complete transparency, believing that honesty would prevent speculation. Others cautioned against revealing too much, fearing that incomplete information might create panic or misunderstanding. These debates, though silent to the outside world, reflected the immense pressure of balancing public duty with private urgency. In one particularly tense moment, King Charles reportedly gathered his senior staff and advisors for a private briefing. The room was thick with tension, every face reflecting worry, responsibility, and the weight of the monarchy. Discussions included everything from William's medical condition to security measures and public messaging strategies. Insider reports indicate that Charles emphasized both the gravity of the situation and the need for calm, asking his team to prioritize accuracy, discretion, and emotional sensitivity. Even within the palace, there was a palpable fear that the situation could spiral further if not carefully managed. Meanwhile, the children, George, Charlotte, and Louis, were being shielded from the full scope of the crisis. Kate and trusted aides crafted a narrative designed to comfort them, focusing on reassurance and routine while withholding the most frightening details. Yet, children are perceptive. George reportedly sensed the tension and expressed concern. Charlotte and Louis asked questions that hinted at their awareness that something was seriously wrong. How do you protect young children from a reality they can feel but cannot fully understand? How do you balance honesty and protection when the stakes are the health of a parent and the stability of the monarchy? The emotional tension inside the palace reached peaks that few outside could imagine. Another layer of complexity involved the medical teams. They were not just attending to William's physical needs. They had to communicate with King Charles and Kate, balancing the urgency of treatment with the pressure of palace protocol. Medical advisors faced ethical and logistical dilemmas: when to allow information to be shared, who could access the prints, and how to manage privacy in a setting where global attention is relentless. Each decision carried consequences not just for William's recovery, but for the public perception of the royal family. Every piece of information, every choice, had to be considered carefully. Adding to the complexity were the whispers of palace insiders, many of whom later spoke to journalists or published accounts describing the emotional intensity of those hours. Some aides reported moments of fear so sharp it was almost paralyzing. Others spoke of quiet courage as individuals carried out tasks with precision despite the uncertainty. One insider described the scene as controlled chaos, a delicate balance between panic and protocol, where everyone knew the stakes, but few could predict the outcome. The palace was a pressure cooker, filled with emotion, strategy, and an unspoken understanding that the entire nation was watching, even if only through carefully curated statements and occasional glimpses from the press. Throughout the day, King Charles and Kate remained the central figures around whom all decisions revolved. Charles, managing the weight of kingship and fatherhood simultaneously, made difficult choices about hospital transfers, security, and public messaging. Kate, handling the emotional side of the crisis, provided stability to the family while coordinating with medical teams and aides. Their combined leadership created a fragile balance, preventing panic from spreading too far while ensuring that every critical step was taken for William's well-being. The contrast between their public composure and private turmoil painted a vivid picture of a family under siege, navigating fear, love, and duty all at once. But it wasn't just the family and staff feeling the pressure. The palace had to consider the broader implications. How would the public react if they knew the full extent of William's injuries? Could international relations be affected by the perception of vulnerability in the monarchy? Advisors debated how to frame messages, what to reveal, and how to reassure not only the British public but global audiences invested in the royal family. Every choice was high stakes, every word measured. The tension was relentless, and the emotional weight on King Charles and Kate Middleton was immense. And yet, despite all precautions, there were cracks. Rumors began leaking outside the palace, fueled by observers, journalists, and insiders who noticed unusual activity, sudden cancellations, and atypical communications. Social media amplified the speculation, spreading fragments of truth mixed with conjecture, creating a climate of anxiety and curiosity. The palace had to act fast to maintain control over the narrative while ensuring that William's condition was managed appropriately. Imagine the mental strain of coordinating all this while knowing that every misstep could be magnified tenfold in the court of public opinion. Amid all this, one particular decision became a point of intense discussion: whether or not to allow family members and close aides to be present during initial medical assessments. The stakes were enormous. Allowing too many people could create distractions or security risks. Allowing too few could increase the emotional toll on William and Kate. This decision highlighted the delicate balance of human compassion and royal protocol, a tension that would define the palace's response in the hours and days to come. And it was during this moment of calculated chaos, when every detail mattered, that a revelation emerged from an unexpected source. A member of the palace staff disclosed information that contradicted earlier assumptions about William's injuries. It wasn't merely the fall or the immediate impact that threatened him. There were complications, subtle but critical, that added layers of urgency to the situation. These details, previously unknown even to some senior aides, dramatically changed the approach to treatment, security, and public messaging. The palace was suddenly faced with new questions. How serious were these complications? Should the public know? How do you maintain composure while the ground shifts beneath you? Even in a palace accustomed to centuries of ceremony, protocol, and careful image management, the situation was unprecedented. The combination of physical injury, emotional strain, and public scrutiny created a perfect storm of pressure. Staff whispered, aides coordinated feverishly, and King Charles and Kate Middleton moved with the weight of history on their shoulders. And through it all, one thing became clear: nothing would ever be the same again. The accident, the palace's response, and the hidden complications all set the stage for a crisis that would unfold over the coming days, weeks, and months. A crisis that would test the resilience, loyalty, and composure of the royal family like never before. And just when it seemed the palace had stabilized the immediate chaos, another unexpected development emerged. One that would challenge everything the staff and family thought they knew about the incident, and reveal a layer of secrecy that would change the narrative entirely. What happened next inside Buckingham Palace would set the stage for the shocking revelations in the coming chapters, and no one could have predicted it. What if the very injury that shook a nation was far more complicated than anyone, even those closest to Prince William, initially realized? The accident had already sent shockwaves through Buckingham Palace, rattled aides, and ignited speculation across the globe. But what was unfolding inside the medical sphere was a story far more urgent, intricate, and fraught with tension. The truth about William's condition would ultimately reveal not just physical danger, but the vulnerability of a future king and the fragile balance of life behind palace walls. From the moment William was admitted to the secure medical facility, a highly coordinated team of specialists assessed his injuries. The palace had arranged for the very best care, doctors handpicked for their expertise in trauma, neurology, and orthopedic medicine. Every aspect of his transport, from the discreet ambulance route to the tightly controlled hospital wing, was executed with military-like precision. But even with such preparation, the first evaluations produced results that were deeply concerning. The prince's fall, initially thought to involve minor fractures or bruises, had actually caused multiple serious complications: a significant cranial contusion, fractures in both the wrist and forearm, and internal bruising that posed hidden risks to his vital organs. Doctors worked methodically, prioritizing stabilization and careful monitoring. Heart rate, blood pressure, oxygen levels, and neurological responses were tracked with relentless attention. Imaging scans revealed subtle internal bleeding, small but critical in its potential to escalate. A head injury of this nature, particularly for someone as active and public-facing as William, carried the risk of long-term effects: cognitive impairment, reduced motor coordination, and even memory complications. The realization sent ripples through the team. They knew that each decision, whether to operate immediately, employ minimally invasive techniques, or monitor conservatively, could have profound consequences for the prince's recovery and future life. But here's where the story takes an even more alarming turn. Insider sources revealed that William's medical team discovered a pre-existing condition that, while previously managed, significantly complicated his recovery. Some sources suggested it was a minor cardiac irregularity. Others hinted at a previously undetected clotting issue. Regardless of the specifics, the presence of this condition meant that standard treatment protocols required adjustment. Doctors had to balance immediate care with the long-term implications for his health. Every intervention was measured, every choice debated, and every step carried a weight few could fully grasp. Kate Middleton remained a constant presence throughout these critical hours. Though medical staff limited access to reduce stress on William, Kate was permitted to be nearby during key evaluations. Witnesses reported her quietly supporting the prince, holding his hand, whispering reassurances, and enduring her own visible anxiety. The strain on her was extraordinary. She had to maintain composure in front of staff, coordinate communication with King Charles, and manage her own emotional response, all while absorbing news of complications that could threaten not just recovery, but life itself. How does one remain composed when the person you love most is vulnerable, and every detail of treatment could affect not only their life, but the future of a nation? Even King Charles, known for measured responses, revealed glimpses of personal strain. Advisors recounted him pacing private rooms, reviewing medical updates, and making critical decisions under extreme pressure. His role was twofold: father and monarch. Each update about William's condition carried dual significance: personal grief intertwined with national responsibility. Charles had to trust medical assessments while simultaneously planning for contingencies, ensuring that the continuity of the monarchy remained intact. Imagine the complexity of that position. Every heartbeat of William resonated not just as a family concern, but as a potential pivot point for the stability of the nation. But what truly shocked the medical team, and would later shock insiders, was the subtle progression of William's condition over the first few hours. While initial scans suggested stabilization, further testing revealed minor but concerning signs of swelling in the brain, a complication that could exacerbate neurological damage. Doctors immediately revised treatment plans, introducing additional monitoring protocols, medications to reduce inflammation, and precautions to minimize risk during transport and handling. The prince's condition was a delicate balancing act. Too aggressive an intervention could introduce new complications. Too conservative a strategy could allow hidden injuries to worsen. Every decision became a calculated risk. As the hours stretched into what insiders described as an unbroken vigil, the palace faced another challenge: managing information. Doctors needed uninterrupted focus, aides had to maintain protocol, and King Charles and Kate had to navigate the public narrative. Every report had to be accurate yet measured, every update carefully framed. The palace released only the most minimal details to the public, confirming that William was injured and receiving care, without specifying severity. Yet those within the inner circle knew the stakes were higher than anyone outside the palace could imagine. Adding to the tension was the unpredictable nature of trauma recovery. While some injuries might show rapid improvement, others could flare unexpectedly. William's head trauma required constant neurological evaluation, watching for subtle shifts in cognitive response, alertness, and coordination. Medical staff had to be ready for sudden interventions, and the family had to prepare emotionally for each update, knowing that progress might be slow and setbacks could occur at any moment. Imagine being in that position, every second a blend of hope and fear, every movement scrutinized for potential signs of danger. The psychological weight on the royal family was immense. In addition to physical complications, medical teams were highly attuned to the emotional and psychological impact of the trauma. William, always active and accustomed to control, faced a sudden limitation of mobility, uncertainty about recovery, and the looming awareness of public attention. Doctors introduced measures to ensure mental well-being, including controlled interactions, familiar objects, and consistent reassurance from Kate and other trusted aides. They understood that emotional stability could directly affect physical recovery. This dual focus, physical and emotional, is rarely highlighted in public accounts of royal medical emergencies, but it was crucial in this case. Another critical factor emerged in the discussions between palace and medical staff: timing. Decisions about interventions, potential surgeries, and rehabilitation protocols had to be synchronized with the broader palace schedule. High-profile events, public engagements, and global expectations loomed over even the most private medical choices. The team had to anticipate delays, media scrutiny, and questions from the public, all while keeping William's health as the top priority. It was a delicate, often invisible, calculus of life, duty, and perception. Kate's role in these discussions was subtle but pivotal. While doctors provided technical assessments, Kate served as a bridge between medical reality and royal concern. Her questions were practical. What risks exist for long-term recovery? How soon can William resume daily activities? What precautions must be taken to prevent further complications? Her involvement ensured that decisions were grounded in both empathy and reality, highlighting her importance not just as consort, but as active partner in crisis management. But perhaps the most shocking revelation came when doctors uncovered another hidden factor, a minor but significant pre-existing vulnerability that had never manifested publicly. While its nature was medical, the implications were profound. It meant that William's recovery would not follow a typical trajectory. Setbacks could be sudden, and monitoring would be required for weeks, if not months. For the palace, this discovery meant revising internal plans, adjusting security protocols, and preparing for contingencies that could affect public appearances, succession planning, and media messaging. And yet, despite the gravity of the situation, William himself displayed remarkable resilience. Witnesses reported moments of humor, small gestures to lighten the tension, and an unwavering determination to remain composed for his family. His courage in the face of adversity added emotional weight to the situation, inspiring aides, staff, and even the medical team. But this resilience did not mitigate the seriousness of his injuries. It simply underscored the complexity of balancing human emotion with medical urgency. Even as doctors worked tirelessly to stabilize him, questions remained unanswered. Could all complications be anticipated? Were there hidden risks that might appear days later? And most importantly, what would this mean for his future health and ability to fulfill the duties of a future king? These were questions that hung over every decision, shaping the careful, measured, and at times tense approach of the palace and medical staff. And then came the message that shocked everyone. Despite initial stabilization, the doctors warned of a potential escalation that could dramatically alter William's condition. Hidden complications, subtle but critical, had been discovered. These were not visible to the casual observer or even some palace aides, yet they carried serious implications for his recovery. The inner circle realized that while the immediate crisis was under control, the unfolding situation demanded constant vigilance, careful planning, and a readiness for rapid response. The medical truth was clear. Prince William's injury was far more severe than the public initially understood. The combination of physical trauma, hidden complications, and the need for meticulous monitoring created a situation of unprecedented complexity. It was a medical emergency that required precision, patience, and resilience. both from William and those around him. And while the palace worked tirelessly to manage the immediate danger, the implications of these medical revelations would ripple far beyond the hospital walls, affecting decisions, perceptions, and the emotional landscape of the royal family in ways few could anticipate. But just when it seemed that the medical crisis had been contained, another layer of concern emerged, a subtle, almost imperceptible detail that would later reveal itself as crucial to William's recovery. This hidden complication, known only to the medical team initially, hinted at the possibility of further setbacks, moments of crisis that could undo the progress made so far. And what came next, the palace realized, would demand not just medical expertise, but strategic foresight, emotional endurance, and the kind of decision-making that could shape the monarchy itself. What if the danger didn't end with the fall? What if the most shocking threats were not physical, but hidden in whispers, alliances, and secrets that festered behind the gilded walls of the palace? Prince William's injury had exposed more than just vulnerability. It had cracked open a world of palace intrigue, where loyalties could be questioned, and the very stability of the monarchy could be subtly threatened. Inside Buckingham Palace, amid the chaos of medical emergencies and public speculation, the undercurrents of tension surged stronger than anyone had anticipated. While William lay in a secure hospital wing under the vigilant care of his medical team, whispers began circulating among the palace staff and advisors. The incident, though treated as a medical crisis, revealed cracks in what many assumed to be an unshakable system. Some aides, under stress and fear, began revealing fragments of confidential information, small inconsistencies in schedules, unexplained absences, and decisions that deviated from standard protocols. These discrepancies, though minor at first glance, hinted at deeper fractures within the palace hierarchy. Could the very system designed to protect William have failed him in subtle, undetectable ways? And more chillingly, could human ambition and rivalry have played a role in the unfolding crisis? King Charles and Kate Middleton were acutely aware of these hidden threats. Reports from trusted insiders indicated that a few senior advisors had been privately criticized in the hours following William's accident. Some were accused of miscommunication. Others were suspected of withholding crucial details during the early stages of the incident. The palace's internal mechanisms, normally fluid and coordinated, had shown stress points. And in a building where hierarchy and protocol are paramount, even small lapses could create ripples of tension, suspicion, and ultimately betrayal. Could those closest to the family be capable of actions, intentional or otherwise, that endangered William or complicated his recovery? The thought alone sent shivers through those who had dedicated their lives to service. One particularly alarming revelation came from a senior aide, who had quietly observed the coordination of emergency responses. According to sources, certain instructions were delayed, not due to negligence, but because of competing priorities, rivalries, and misaligned loyalties. Security personnel debated the fastest route to the hospital, while medical liaisons argued over protocol, each asserting authority in ways that slowed decisions by critical minutes. While no deliberate harm occurred, the incident exposed vulnerabilities in the palace's inner circle, flaws that, if unaddressed, could have far-reaching consequences. The staff, normally disciplined and coordinated, had shown cracks under pressure. And in an environment where trust is currency, even minor lapses sow seeds of doubt. But perhaps the most chilling aspect of these hidden threats lay not in incompetence, but in ambition. In the halls of Buckingham Palace, there are always factions, those loyal to the crown, those seeking influence, and those whose ambitions may, knowingly or unknowingly, conflict with the best interests of the royal family. Prince William's accident created a window of opportunity, a fleeting moment when decision-making, access, and influence were all in flux. Rumors later surfaced that some insiders attempted to assert influence over messaging, medical updates, and even access to William himself, attempting to leverage the situation for personal gain. While nothing overtly malicious occurred, the existence of such power plays revealed the precariousness of even the most carefully managed institutions. Could human ambition, subtle as it may be, have complicated the prince's recovery in ways the public will never know? Kate Middleton's role in this dynamic was critical. Observers and insiders noted that she had to navigate not only the emotional and medical challenges of William's condition, but also the undercurrents of palace politics. Every interaction, every decision required vigilance. Who could be trusted with sensitive updates? Which advisors were acting out of loyalty, and which were motivated by self-interest? Kate had to balance compassion with caution, diplomacy with decisiveness. Imagine managing a family crisis while simultaneously navigating an environment rife with potential betrayal and hidden agendas. The psychological toll was immense. Even within King Charles's trusted circle, disagreements emerged. Advisors who had worked together for years now found themselves at odds over priorities and protocol. Some argued for complete transparency with the public to maintain trust. Others insisted on strict secrecy to preserve the family's image. Some advocated for immediate intervention on potential hidden risks, while others prioritized cautious monitoring. These tensions were not just professional. They reflected deeper questions of loyalty, ethics, and the delicate balance of power within the palace. Every decision was scrutinized, every recommendation questioned, and every interaction fraught with potential consequences. Insiders also reported subtle yet impactful moments of tension between security personnel and medical staff. Normally aligned in mission, the two groups now navigated overlapping jurisdictions, competing protocols, and differing philosophies about risk management. A delay here, a disagreement there, and suddenly a simple procedural task could escalate into a critical point of contention. In a situation already defined by urgency, these hidden conflicts amplified stress, uncertainty, and the sense of potential betrayal. Could even well-intentioned disagreements inadvertently threaten William's recovery? The answer, as the palace later confirmed, was yes. Coordination under pressure became as vital as medical expertise itself. Beyond the palace staff, the incident also exposed fractures in the broader perception of trust and loyalty. External observers, journalists, royal experts, and even political figures began speculating about the dynamics within the monarchy. Some suggested that rivalries between branches of the family or differing visions for succession could create tension during times of crisis. Others posited that certain aides might have leveraged the situation to advance personal agendas, subtle manipulations that could impact decisions at critical moments. While much of this remains unverified, the mere existence of these suspicions added another layer of complexity to an already tense environment. And then there were the leaks. Despite strict confidentiality agreements, fragments of information began surfacing in media outlets and social platforms. Some details were accurate, others were distorted. But collectively, they painted a picture of vulnerability, not just physical, but institutional. The palace faced the dual challenge of managing a medical crisis while countering a flood of speculation that threatened to erode public confidence. Each leak, whether intentional or accidental, heightened the sense of uncertainty and exposed the monarchy to scrutiny in a way few had anticipated. Amid this web of tensions, King Charles demonstrated extraordinary leadership. According to insiders, he personally oversaw internal communications, mediated disagreements, and ensured that decisions were ultimately guided by the best interests of William. Yet even with his experience and composure, Charles faced moments of profound uncertainty. How much information to share with staff? How much to reveal to the public? Which advisors could be trusted with critical decisions? And at what point does loyalty become ambiguous when stakes are so high? These were not theoretical questions. They shaped every movement, every conversation, and every decision in those critical hours. Kate Middleton, too, displayed remarkable insight and resilience. Not only did she manage her own fear and the emotional needs of William and their children, but she also had to interpret subtle dynamics among palace aides, medical staff, and security personnel. In private accounts, insiders described her as a stabilizing force, a quiet presence who could diffuse tension, ensure coordination, and maintain focus on the prince's well-being. Her ability to balance empathy, decisiveness, and political acumen proved crucial in navigating the treacherous landscape of palace politics under crisis. Yet, despite these efforts, uncertainty lingered. Hidden threats were not just structural, they were human. Ambitions, rivalries, and misaligned priorities had already influenced key moments in the response. And as the hours stretched into the night, questions loomed. Could these subtle betrayals escalate? Could delays or missteps exacerbate William's condition? How much of the palace's internal drama would remain hidden, and how much would eventually surface to the public? The answers were unclear, and the tension inside Buckingham Palace grew almost unbearable. And then came the most unexpected revelation of all. And in those hushed corridors, where whispers carried more weight than announcements, the staff, the advisors, and even the family understood one crucial fact: the crisis was far from contained. But just when it seemed that the palace had navigated the immediate threats, another revelation emerged, one that would redefine the boundaries of loyalty, unveil shocking betrayals, and set the stage for a series of events that no one, not even the closest aides, could have predicted. The hidden dangers were far from over, and the next chapter would expose secrets that could alter the monarchy forever. What does it feel like to watch the person you love most, the father of your children, the future king, lying in a hospital bed, vulnerable and in pain? For Kate Middleton, the hours following Prince William's accident were some of the most harrowing of her life. Publicly, she is composed, poised, and polished, an icon of royal grace. But behind closed doors, she faced a storm of fear, uncertainty, and heartbreak that few outsiders could ever imagine. This chapter is not just about a royal crisis. It's about a woman's unwavering devotion, the silent courage it takes to hold a family together, and the emotional weight of seeing your partner in peril while the world watches. From the moment Kate received the initial news of William's injury, she sprang into action. She had to navigate a labyrinth of palace protocol, security measures, and medical advisories, all while managing her own emotions. Aides later described her as a calm force of energy, quietly commanding attention and coordinating every step with meticulous precision. But the truth was far more complex. Beneath the calm exterior, Kate was experiencing waves of panic and grief. The woman who had once appeared serene at countless public events now faced the terrifying reality of her husband's vulnerability, and she knew that any misstep could worsen the situation. Kate's first thoughts were of the children, George, Charlotte, and Louis. How much should they know? How could she protect them from fear without sheltering them entirely from the truth? She had to craft explanations that were age-appropriate, truthful enough to be believable, yet gentle enough to prevent trauma. Sources later revealed that she spent hours with the children, offering reassurances, hugs, and quiet words of comfort, all while concealing the severity of William's injuries. The emotional strain was immense. She had to appear composed to the children even as her own heart raced with anxiety. Imagine balancing those two realities: personal fear and the need to project confidence to protect those you love. Amid the personal anguish, Kate also had to navigate the pressures of public perception. The cameras outside, the media speculation, and the constant scrutiny of the royal family added layers of stress. Every gesture, every appearance, every carefully chosen word could be dissected and analyzed. Yet Kate maintained a remarkable poise, coordinating with palace communications teams to ensure that the family's official messaging was consistent and reassuring, all while dealing with the raw emotional weight of the moment behind closed doors. One of the most emotionally devastating moments occurred during the early hours of William's hospitalization. Insiders report that Kate sat by his bedside, holding his hand, speaking softly, and trying to mask her own tears. The prince, conscious but in pain, attempted to comfort her in return, offering small jokes and gestures meant to ease tension. The scene, though private, reflected the profound depth of their bond, a partnership built on love, trust, and mutual support. For Kate, this was not about ceremonial duties or public appearances. It was about survival, human connection, and the hope that the man she loved would recover. Yet, Kate's heartbreak was compounded by the complexity of the situation. William's injuries were severe, and medical updates suggested complications that could affect not only immediate recovery, but long-term health. Doctors provided careful explanations, detailing potential risks, rehabilitation timelines, and the uncertainty of outcomes. Each update was a mix of hope and fear, progress and caution. For Kate, every word was a test of emotional endurance. How do you remain strong for your family when the very foundation of your life, the health of your partner, is in jeopardy? Her heartbreak was also deeply private. While aides and medical staff observed her composure in public interactions, Kate reportedly experienced moments of profound isolation. Long hours at the hospital, interrupted sleep, and the relentless pressure of coordinating updates left her physically and emotionally exhausted. Yet she remained vigilant, knowing that any lapse could have consequences not only for William's well-being, but also for the stability of the family and the monarchy. In a way, her heartbreak was inseparable from her sense of duty, a dual burden she bore with grace and determination. The intensity of Kate's emotional experience was further magnified by the palace dynamics. While she focused on William's immediate needs, she also had to contend with internal tensions among staff and advisors. Conflicting recommendations, differing opinions on public messaging, and subtle political maneuvering added layers of stress. Every interaction required careful judgment, diplomacy, and strategic thinking. Kate had to maintain focus on the prince's recovery while simultaneously navigating a web of human complexity within the palace. The emotional load was staggering. Insiders noted a particularly poignant moment during a private consultation with medical staff. Kate, visibly shaken but composed, asked detailed, probing questions about William's condition, recovery prospects, and the implications of various treatment options. She sought clarity not just for herself, but to make informed decisions in the best interest of their family. Her inquiries revealed both her intelligence and her emotional resilience, yet also underscored the deep anxiety she carried. Every question reflected a blend of love, worry, and determination to protect the man she adored. Even as Kate managed these challenges, she had to maintain her role as a public figure. Her appearances, though carefully limited, were scrutinized by the media and public alike. Observers praised her composure, yet few could see the depth of her emotional labor. The juxtaposition of public calm and private heartbreak exemplified the dual realities of life within the royal family, a relentless balancing act between image and truth, duty and personal vulnerability. What do you do when the life of your eldest son, the future king, hangs in the balance, and every decision you make could reshape the monarchy forever? For King Charles, the hours following Prince William's accident were a crucible of leadership, responsibility, and personal anguish. Unlike Kate, whose heartbreak was raw and intimate, Charles faced a different kind of pressure, the need to act decisively while safeguarding both his son and the institution he has spent decades stewarding. Every choice had consequences that extended far beyond the hospital room, affecting the palace, the children, the nation, and even global perception of the royal family. Immediately after the accident, Charles was briefed on William's condition. The severity of the injuries, coupled with subtle complications revealed by the medical team, made the situation more critical than the public realized. Advisors and medical experts presented him with options, ranging from immediate aggressive interventions to careful monitoring with staged updates, but none were without risk. Every option carried potential consequences for William's health and the monarchy's stability. Charles had to weigh not just medical facts, but also the ripple effects of each decision. The psychological impact on William, Kate, and their children, the operational impact on palace staff, and the perception of the royal family under intense global scrutiny. What made this crisis unprecedented was not only the physical danger to William, but the timing and context. The accident occurred during a period of heightened public attention, with major royal events scheduled, international engagements looming, and media speculation already building. Charles knew that even a minor misstep in communication could spark panic or mistrust among the public. He had to be strategic, precise, and bold, ensuring that decisions prioritized William's survival while protecting the integrity and reputation of the monarchy. Could any monarch truly be prepared for a crisis of this magnitude? Could anyone make choices under such relentless scrutiny without faltering? One of the first bold decisions Charles made was regarding public communication. Unlike typical royal crises, which often rely on vague statements and carefully curated silence, Charles authorized a direct confirmation that William's injuries were serious. The message, conveyed through